There we go. Hi, guys. There we go. All right. So we wanted to talk to you guys today about this. Well, there's a number of things we were going to talk about, but then this BBC story came out about the Uyghurs.
Now, we've been talking about China exposing their concentration camps, which they are re-educating Muslim Uyghurs in China. And now we are finding out what we knew was going on all along. We've been trying to tell people this was happening. And meanwhile, the UN still fails to recognize them for the human rights abuses that they are. And we continue trading with China, being friendly with China. And now we have a super friendly administration and technocracy-backed democracy that is very friendly with China. And this is alarming on so many levels. But it is really important for people to know what is going on over there. And this BBC expose is showing that women are being systematically raped, tortured, sometimes with electric batons, horrific abuse. And this is not just an anomaly. This is happening systemically. This is a culture there. A female guard was interviewed privately and revealed that this is a culture, these gang rapes. In some instances, women were taken for having too many children and were put into these camps. So they're using whatever thing they can come up with. And
they don't need a predicate. I mean, it's just like the Holocaust.
I'm letting people know what they're using this under the guise of eugenics and they're forcing vaccinations on them. So they're using them as test subjects, just like the Holocaust with the what was his name? Dr. Mengele, sorry. Dr. Mengele, those horrific experiments that happened in World War II in these concentration camps. So they're doing this now. We're in 2021. This is happening in our world. And not a peep from the left about this, not a peep from the Biden administration.
I doubt they'll do anything. And the reality is, you have to ask yourself, so people have said forever, never again about the Holocaust. They would never allow this sort of atrocity to happen ever again. And the truth is, we're seeing the beginning stages of it happening now. They took these people, ripped them from their homes, and threw them into these camps. The somewhat compliant people, they sold off to have Chinese husbands. And then the non-compliant, they threw into the re-education camps with the men. And those are the women who now, this BBC, listen, you guys know, I am very critical of reporting in the mainstream media. The BBC report is solid. They have solid sourcing. They name a bunch of the sources, go on record. And what you have is just horrific accounts of
sterilizations, forced medications. So they're, sedating these women. They're raping them. They're
literally putting electric batons in their private parts. Yeah. I'm being 100% serious. So you have to ask yourself, what would you have wanted your government to do when this started to happen with the Nazis? Because this is essentially we're at the same place. Some people bristle at the idea of using the phrase concentration camp because there's this connotation that means millions of people have to die. That's not what a concentration camp means. That's what happened in that era because people didn't step in quickly enough the way they should have. And we have to ask ourselves, do we really mean never again with this stuff, or is that just a word people say to make themselves feel better? Because my fear is under this administration, it's just going to be lip service and they're not going to actually do anything. And we'll continue not only trading with China, but we will trade to a larger degree. And China will take more jobs back there and they'll destroy more of our economy while at the same time doing these just atrocious, horrific things at home. And so people need to call this out. People need to be aware this is happening in China. So if you haven't seen the story, go to the BBC.
Well, you retweeted it.
I retweeted the story.
Retweeted it.
And it's absolutely horrific.
It needs to be shared. Everywhere. Everybody needs to read it. This is unbelievable. This is happening in our time.
Question we need to ask ourselves too is, so if I told you, if I said, hey, what's your favorite shop? And you said, oh, it's, let's make up a store. We'll call it Shop Store. Okay. Let's say it's Shop Store. And you're like, oh, it's Shop Store. I love Shop Store. And I said, hey, did you see the news? Shop Store was actually capturing customers and they were being brutally gang raped and they were torturing women and selling them off as prostitutes. And they're involved in this, this horrific trafficking and abuse operation. I don't think you would ever go there again. I think you would pretty much be like, whoa, I'm never shopping at that ridiculous store ever again. I'm going to call the police or whatever it is, but you would definitely not shop there again. Okay. Now, when it comes to China, though, are we going to have the same rules? I want to know from the Biden administration, will we have the same rules with China? Because we should have the same rules as we would have in our normal day-to-day life. Just because we're not walking in the store doesn't mean it's not happening. The money's trading hands. Our jobs are getting sent over there. So we need to be really clear about what our lines actually are. Because this story, I mean, it's so horrendous. I don't even want to read it, because they're clearly doing medical experimentation on them. They're doing forced injections with stuff that the people don't know. They're doing it every 15 days. They do that. They're forcibly sterilized. I mean, the horrific nature of forced sterilization is something that, like, I don't care what political party people are. I don't care if the Uyghurs hate America. I don't care if they hate me. You don't do this to people. People are not, we don't treat people like animals. Okay. And we don't treat animals like this, I mean, like, we're treating them worse than you would treat an animal that you're hunting. And so in that regard, I just feel like something has to be said about it. There's other stories that we planned on talking about today, but then this came across.
I wanted to mention too, that China, the CCP, their propaganda machine, is still issuing statements saying that they are for women's rights and equality and all of the lip service that people apparently are buying. All they have to do is say it. All you have to do is say what you're supposed to say, and it doesn't matter what you're actually doing. And this rhetoric is what has kept people from doing something about it. Because, I mean, look at when AOC was calling, the border detention facilities concentration camps, and people were outraged. There was no rapes. There was nothing like that happening. The rapes happened on the way to our country. And people, I think, became desensitized to that term. So now when we actually have concentration camps happening, there's no outrage. Nobody on the left seems to care about this issue. And I don't know how many people on the right are reporting on it, but we have to get loud on this issue. And we really need to figure out why we are still trading. Why are we still sending jobs? Why are we still empowering a country?
A monstrous communist regime.
I mean, not even the fact that they want to destroy us, our culture, our country, everything, but the fact that they are a grave human rights abuse country, that they are getting away with this genocide is.
I am going to read this section.
Okay.
So this section I'm going to read because I think it makes a point. It's brutal. I'm giving you fair warning. It's from BBC. The story is on my Twitter account. I'll post it up on my Gab and my Instagram later today, and Telegram, so people can read it. But I'm going to read you a section of it that is, I think it says everything about what's going on there and how far China's willing to go. Okay. This is in the words of a witness, somebody who was imprisoned there, and they have multiple people who were imprisoned and tortured there on record here. So the night Sedek didn't sleep at all. She said, I was thinking about my daughter who was studying abroad and I cried all night. In a separate testimony to the Uyghur Human Rights Project, she said she heard the electrified stick being inserted into women to torture them, echoing the experience another victim, Zia Wadoon, described. There were 4 kinds of electric shock, Sedgwick said: the chair, the glove, the helmet, and anal rape with a stick. The screams echoed throughout the building. I could hear them during lunch and when I was in class. Another teacher forced to work in the camp, Siriai Soitbay, said the BBC that rape was common and the guards picked the girls and young women they wanted and took them away. She witnessed a harrowing public gang rape of a woman of just 20 or 21 years old who was brought before 100 other detainees as they did this. This should never happen in any country. Anybody who, you shouldn't have to have a daughter, you shouldn't have to have kids to know that this is not okay. It's not acceptable. You can't do business with people who behave like this. These people are monsters. Um, my family came from a communist country, and they did things like this, and people ignored it. And what China's doing is worse. What China's doing is 100% on the same path, same sort of timeline as what the Nazis did. Um, Medical experimentation, dehumanization, extreme torture, extreme sexual abuse, and they'll move on to just outright killing mass amounts of people if they haven't already done it. So somebody has to say something, and I hope everybody will use their own social media platforms to do the same thing and talk about this story, because this should never, ever, 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 ever happen on our planet. There's very few sort of lines that we should have where we say, hey, the U.S. has to, sort of intervene in the happenings of the world. I generally want to let people operate on their own outside of our country, but when you abuse children, you murder, you abuse women, you sexually abuse them, you traffic people, you do all this stuff, you cross all these lines. You have to set a standard as a country where you say morally, we don't do business with people who behave like this. At the very least, you have to be able to do that.
And we put sanctions on countries for the most minor, ridiculous reasons.
Ridiculous stuff. And so we need to take this seriously.
I mean, this is something worth canceling, accounts, businesses boycotting China. I mean, there really should be a mass boycott China movement. And also, these technocrats, they allow Chinese propaganda to infiltrate every platform. I mean, they're basically complicit in our own destruction. Yeah. I mean, the misinformation, all of this is peddled by China. They have coordinated bots that Robbie has exposed, one of them. I mean,
I just found a botnet last night I haven't even talked about, because they're not going after politics. They're actually going after the stock market, and it's being run out of China. But China's doing so many things right now to destabilize the world. It's insane. But this by itself is just something that you can't look the other way. I know people want to look the other way. You can't. You cannot look the other way, because they start with one group of people, they move on to another. It will never be enough. China, the control, the power, everything, the money, none of it will ever be enough. Somebody asked a good question. They said, why is Hollywood and the NBA, why are they working with CCP and all these things? They're essentially, I would say they're morally owned by them. They won't speak up about these things because at the end of the day, they answer to money. And China's paid off enough people to look the other way and not speak up.
They're owned.
Yeah, there was this interview, I know some people don't like Megyn Kelly. I think she did a great interview with Mark Cuban where she exposed how unwilling he was to speak up against China, and essentially got him to admit, like, hey, you know what, whatever they do, and I can't judge them type thing. We're talking about the literal, we're talking about horrific stuff. I don't even want to repeat it again. I already said it. You guys know what I'm talking about. The fact that you could excuse that stuff in order to bounce a ball and make money for bouncing balls should make people feel disgusted, embarrassed, and just disturbed. That's the depraved place our society has sunk to.
Right.
Okay? Your bouncing balls and money don't matter as much as it matters to take care of some semblance of morality in society. And the fact that we don't allow innocent women and children to be raped and murdered. That should be very simple. That should be a very simple, innately moral agreement we have across the globe. But we don't have that agreement with China. And so, in Hollywood, I can tell you the ownership from the CCP over Hollywood is vast. I know, our own company had to deal with a major film studio, and their movies started getting funded almost entirely by China. And China was forcing actors into it, forcing storylines out of it because they were storylines they did not want to air in China. They started forcing storylines into it of storylines they did want to be spread throughout China. So they're actively using Hollywood as a manipulation and propaganda tool for their own country. That's something else that should make people very afraid, that China essentially has our own media, our own entertainment companies working for them. It's not bad enough that they do this for the left in our own country, but they're literally doing it for communist China. So, this is why I tell people we have to build our own. And until we have our own built, you cannot give money to these people. they're monstrous. If a company is willing to look the other way and take millions and millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars from China, or companies that are essentially owned by China anyways, they don't deserve our business. They don't deserve our money. And that goes with people on the right too. Honestly, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. If you're taking millions upon millions of dollars from this disgusting, depraved, murderous communist regime, then, you know, I don't have anything nice to say. You honestly, you can go.
No, but I mean, it trickles down to us. We keep waiting for somebody to start a movement or a hashtag. Like, we just have to do it. It's an individual led effort. You know, if each one of us does that and has that sense of accountability and involvement, you know, we can make a difference here. And I think that's what we have to do, because we can't, the lack of coordination and organization on our side is it's something that is not going to get fixed overnight. And so we have to do what we do best, which is we're individualistic. So we need to capitalize on that individualism, and each one of us take a stand in our own lives and stop supporting and enabling these systems. That's all we can do. That's what we can do. And people are like, well, what can we do? Everybody's waiting for this big movement or big campaign to latch onto, and it might never come.
Yeah. And
these people, meanwhile, are being horrifically abused. And we're sitting here watching NBA games. We're sitting here having our Netflix, enriching the Obamas. We're sitting here ordering cheap crap from Amazon made by trafficked children. Buying,
So
we have the power to not enable these systems, to not contribute. And we're, the very least we can speak out. But then after that, what do we do?
Yeah.
We all know what needs to be done, and we need to stop asking, what can we do? We know what we need to do. We just have to be willing to do it, to not be comfortable, to not give into what's easy and convenient, and to avoid ruffling feathers and uncomfortable conversations. This is what we have to get past.
Yep. There's one more part of this story that I want to read, and then we'll move on, talk about two other issues, and then we'll be done today. But so this is another piece of this. I think it's important because they did do this in Cuba, and it's something that they're doing here too. So the Chinese, as well as the medical interventions, detainees in this camp spent hours singing patriotic Chinese songs and watching patriotic TV programs about Chinese President Xi Jinping. You forget to think about life outside the camp. This is one of the victims. You forget to think about life outside the camp. I don't know if they brainwashed us or if it was a side effect of the injections and pills, but you can't think about anything beyond wishing you had a full stomach. This food deprivation is so severe. Detainees had food withheld for infractions such as failing to accurately memorize passages from books about Xi Jinping, and more. Once we were talking, or actually I want to skip to this part. So they had to wear special clothing that honored the Communist Party while they were sleep deprived and beaten. And they were forced to memorize books. This is what they did so if you remember back in the presidential campaign, Bernie Sanders was praising Cuba's literacy program. Well, this is a description of Cuba's literacy program. That's what they did to Cubans. They forced them to memorize Marxist propaganda. And if they didn't, they faced beatings or food deprivation and things along those lines. That was the literacy, was being forced into reading communist propaganda. That's what Bernie was a fan of. We can move on. I hope everybody spreads that story.
I just want to say one more thing, because, how do we change what's normal? What's considered normal? What's considered normal is all of what we see and experience every day. And if you're getting more impressions of leftism or of buying Chinese products or Chinese propaganda, that becomes normal. And what normal is what defines our culture.
Yep.
So when they're trying to redefine the new normal, what they want is they want their shows to stay on. They want their systems to be enriched. And people tell themselves this lie because we've been indoctrinated to believe that we're not enough and we can't do anything. And you're right. China has, so much money and power and influence, and Hollywood will still exist even if we all pull out. But there's a trickle effect and a cultural impact and effect. And there, are advertisers that will pull out. There's a trickle effect that happens to destabilize. And it's not about the intention of wiping it out. It's about individually supporting it. It's about a moral conversation we have with ourselves of, are we going to enable our own destruction and then complain about it? Because we have no right to complain about it when we're enabling it and acting like we're the victim. We're not the victim if we're enabling it. And so we are complicit in that. And acting like, oh, well, even if we do this, Amazon will still be the leading online marketplace and monopoly. You're right, they will, but eventually they won't. It's about destabilizing the whole system.
Yeah. So we're going to circle back to this story at a later point. We're not going to leave it alone, but we're going to move on for now. I hope people spread that story. There's two other things we're going to talk about today. They'll be somewhat brief, but so members of the Trump administration requested parental leave towards the end of the administration before Biden was inaugurated. And the typical thing has always been to not shut these things down. And in one case, it was two parents who worked for DHS and they had a premature baby right before. And so they're supposed to get their parental leave for 90 days. And the Biden administration actually denied not just their leave, took their health insurance away. And so with a premature baby, the baby didn't have their health insurance pulled too. The parents, all the benefits to be able to take care of the baby and whatnot. So they have to immediately look for a new job, both parents. And then Biden also said no to basically any Trump administration member who was asking for parental leave. So there's other members of the White House and of other administration spots. I mean, obscure things like Commerce Secretary of Communications, whatever, not a super political job. And they denied it for these parents. It's just evil. It's just evil, especially in the case of like the premature baby. I don't know what's wrong with these people. But again, you don't do that. Like, they're punishing innocent people again because of political differences. We should never be doing that. It's just disgusting. And it just shows how horrific our politics has become when you'll do that to score political points with your side. And the sad thing is people on their side will cheer it. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, punish them. You're punishing the child, to not have that time with their parents when they're born and the care that they may need. So, do you want to say anything about that before we move on to the Hunter?
I mean, no.
So we just want to ask, did everybody forget about Hunter Biden? Everybody forget? Everyone forget that there were text messages? There's texts from him and his family member talking about the fact that he was accused by his dead brother's wife, who then became his girlfriend. Yes, he started dating his dead brother's wife, was accused by her of being sexually inappropriate with his 14-year-old niece. There's text messages of this, okay? There's also text messages of Hunter saying that his mom, which I'm assuming he's referring to Jill, also was telling people that he was sexually inappropriate with his 14-year-old niece. Did everyone just forget that this happened?
Yeah, he was at the inauguration, hugging. Everybody was fine. By the way, why was?
Where's the media?
Nothing. And these reports were, the laptop. This was given to police and FBI. They've done nothing. And why is our side not protesting outside the police department and the local FBI field office there, where these crimes were allegedly to have been committed? I don't know.
So there's a reason why, if anybody saw the news earlier in the week on my,
I'd be there.
It's either Delaware or Connecticut, I don't remember. If you guys remember earlier this week, I posted news about the fact that Hunter Biden, he has a criminal defense attorney hired, okay? The partner and colleague of that criminal defense attorney was then hired to the Department of Justice's criminal division. Now, anybody think there's conflict of interest there? I think that speaks pretty clearly about where they expect that cases against Hunter to go, because technically the cases are open. What's interesting about that whole Hunter thing is that the media accused Trump of trying to use it as a campaign issue, but the truth is, he could have forced the Department of Justice to announce the fact that there was a long-running investigation much earlier, and he didn't do it. And they only found this out afterwards, really after the election, that this was a long-running investigation that they had open for a long period of time. So, that's something you need. So, by the way, thank you, Brian Kelly. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, we need to support independent, conservative content creators, because if we don't make these shifts, these little micro shifts, we will never affect the macro. And people have to understand how culture, I mean, look exactly what the left has done. All right. If you just said that they have been, would have been able to do everything that they've been able to do with our kids, with our education system, people would have been like, you're crazy. You can't do all that. But they did it one bit by bit. And we have to reverse it bit by bit. You know, so it really comes down to, who are we?
So I put this on screen.
Actions need to be in alignment.
I put this on screen from Brian Kelly. He just he dropped $10 on YouTube to us and says, "You vote with your money. You can support conservative media and creators, or you can support the enemies of free speech." Mm-hmm. I don't think you can say it more concisely than that. That's perfectly said, Brian. We have to support alternative media, alternative, sources on all this stuff, because we don't get it straight from everybody. I guarantee I'd be shocked if CNN's talking about Uyghurs today, or if MSNBC or even Fox is talking about Fox. The only person who'll talk about it on Fox is probably Tucker Carlson. Mm-hmm. He'll talk about it. Maybe, you might get, I'm trying to think who else, maybe Laura Ingraham would talk about it. No, but the point is, not many people there are going to talk about it. Okay. And no one at CNN,
it'll be
MSNBC
a quick hit,
will talk
and the
about
next day it'll be on to something else.
The only person I could see spending extended period of time on the story is Tucker Carlson, because he cares about this stuff. It's not just about, hitting China. Everybody knows I don't like China. I don't go under the belt for things, though. Okay. This is something that is so well sourced and so disgusting what China did that I won't let it go. I will stay on it. China has to pay a price for what they've done, whether it's now or 5 years from now. There has to be a price to pay for this type of horrific abuse. So that's all we had to talk about today. We'll hop back on soon. Thank you guys for being with us. You got anything else? No,
I'm really in a bad mood right now.
Me too.
I'm yeah, it's to be honest, this is why I think coming together is so important, and with like-minded individuals, because you don't want to lose faith in your fellow human beings, your circles, because this should upset everyone. This should be something that gets our butts off the couch and doing something together, and making commitments to make changes. And there's just so much apathy, and there's so much inundation of information and outrage that people are like just outrage fried. They're just fried.
Yeah.
And they have no more emotional energy to give anything. But this is a human rights crisis. These people are being enslaved and tortured, and women are being hogtied and raped with electric instruments, and being force medicated and vaccinated and tested, treated worse than animals. And I don't know what else would be more important than talking about and fighting against.
It seems pretty clear to me they're on the path of the Nazis there in China. So we're going to stay on top of this story. It's going to probably be something we follow throughout the year. Thank you guys for watching. I know it's a disturbing story, but please again share it with people, because it's really important to get the news out there to people who may not know this is going on. So the story is up on my Twitter page. I'll post it on my Instagram. I'll post it on Telegram and Gab and all those places. Mm-hmm. But if you grab from my Twitter for now, it's a BBC story, very in depth. It's worth your time. So thank you guys
for listening to this and caring and being with us, and supporting us and being able to talk about things that matter, and truth. So we appreciate all of y'all.
Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.